have to forgive me, I'm thinking on my feet here because Hammad's done a great job here, but I've taken this one at short notice. So forgive me if I'm a little bit proppy. Psychonauts, give me a round of applause if you've done any psychedelics. You absolute trippers. I don't know, I had a life-changing experience doing DMT actually. First time I did DMT, I didn't know if I was going to die, shit or cum all at the same time. And when you say it like that to people, it's not really enticing. But I gained an enormous amount out of recreational psychedelic use. I'll tell you a quick story. I carried an enormous amount of grief and guilt, particularly about the death of my mother. And I remember one day I came home and my friend was in the backyard with a shade cloth on the lawn, and they were passing around a vaporizer, and they said, have a go on this. And anyway, I did, and I had a convulsion, right? And I felt this like snake-type motion ravel up my spine, and I saw this enormous blue cloud come out of my chest and disappear into the ether. And afterwards I felt this enormous weight of forgiveness, like the universe had forgiven me for something. And I'm glad that stuff is illegal for that reason, because I don't think anyone should feel any forgiveness for things. So that's all I would have to tell you about that. It's also the subject that every white guy talks about on a podcast. I don't know if you've heard Joe Rogan talk about it. It's wild, man, but... everyone likes to talk about DMT like it's a spiritual thing, and it really is. People talk about God, and God is not a religion but a spiritual bond, as one of my favourite rappers says. And if you've got the misfortune to be looking through the cesspit of dating apps in your 30s, you'll notice that people aren't identifying as religious anymore. There's a decline in that, but people are more and more identifying as spiritual. And I think that's a direct result of psychedelic use spreading throughout society, and people having an intellectual curiosity and using substances that indigenous cultures have used for thousands and thousands of years. And some of the, I guess, the pagan churches out of ancient Greece, Dionysus, they were all using some form of psychedelic, which what's not disputed by historians is that they were using psychedelics. What is disputed is what it was. So on that note, I will throw over to my friend Phil here, who I believe is the resident priest in the building. Is there any other priests in here? No, they're all before the Royal Commission. No, just kidding. So I'll throw this one over to you, mate. Bat and change.
How you all doing? I'm supposed to be sharing the podium with Imam Fazal, and he was sitting there with me, and I thought, I'm creaming it, because this guy just would not stop talking. So I thought, I'm just going to sit there and smile and nod and, you know, look cute and cuddly. But no, he nicked off. So it's just me. Psychedelics. It's a great topic. Look, I had a few questions. I thought we were going to be monitored, but is it just free for all, is it?
Go free for all.
Free for all. Okay.
Your man ran away from the psychedelics.
No, I'm just too good looking, and he was intimidated. No, he had his wife and kids down in the car, and they had to nick off. It's just fair enough. I've got wife and kids, I just don't take him anywhere. So here's the thing with psychedelics, right? So I'm not going to glorify my past. An illusion is to think that someone who goes into the ministry has always been a Christian and a good boy. And I can honestly tell you that's not true. Certainly on my side of the story, I got into some crazy stuff. I left home when I was 16, and I tried everything legal and illegal that I could get my hands on. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I actually came to the Christian faith. Now, here's the point. We're talking about, not my story, but psychedelics per se. I think what we have to acknowledge about psychedelics is they're fun, right? Until you get a bad trip. You get a bad trip, you think the world's going to end. You think your life's going to end. You can't control your responses. You are in a bad place. But the thing we have to realise about psychedelics, friends, is there is this transcendent moment when you feel like your body is no longer attached to some spiritual realm. You know, in Christendom, in Christianity, you call that, there's a spirit and a body, and together they're called a soul. So if there is actually, through the process of taking an illicit drug, the ability to separate the two, you do expose yourself to a spiritual, non-physical element. Fair enough, Corey?
Yeah, absolutely.
The dilemma you've got is what is so enticing about the hallucinogen is actually the great danger of it. Or should I say, the great danger in the hallucinogen is actually the attraction, which is the separation from the real of the physical world into a spiritual realm or a soulish realm, however you want to describe it, void of physical. And so there is this moment, which is not really a moment, it can last hours, where you feel quite detached from the world. And it's quite spiritual in the sense that, does everyone understand what I mean by every sort of person? Every person, right, understands there's a physical element to Phil Lewis, and there's this deep spiritual part of me that, had I not gone into the ministry, I'm still a spiritual being, right? I still have the emotion, I still have this invisible connection with people. I love them, I hate them, I despise them, I'm jealous. This is a spiritual thing, it's not physical. I can look at this handsome young man and despise him because he's so good looking. I haven't physically touched him. With this spiritual discernment. So here's the problem for me with the psychedelic or hallucinogens is we find ourselves, for those who have done it, you find yourself in this position where reality, being aligned with the physical, now becomes somewhat detached from this somewhat enlightened state. Now here's the problem under hallucinogens, as I was saying before. The problem is also the attraction. You're now detached. And in that detachment, you have this problem where you have lost the ability to distinguish what's reality. Like Corey was saying before about this experience of this snake-like substance coming up and this head coming and taking off. Now, the question is, did it actually happen? Corey says, yeah. What's that?
Things energetically happens, especially like in our normal a normal day, whilst we're not in any sort of psychedelic or in any sort of drugs, we can't sense that immensely, that strongly. But when we're on psychedelics, we actually can sense the things energetically so much more than what we're capable of when we're not on psychedelics. That is the some say the third eye, some say all the senses of the body actually some sort of get what's the word, enlightens, or some sort of just expands or the capacity of the feeling, basically. So whatever you are seeing or feeling that is actually energetically it's happening, that's why you're seeing or hearing it or feeling it. I don't think you are actually seeing or hearing anything or feeling anything that is not really happening.
So Corey's friends who were on the shake pot with him, could they see this thing?
Oh, he was talking about an energy that was like a snake sort of like kind of energy that was coming down from the spine and just, and that is the core energy, the spinal energy. And sometimes when, I don't know, it obviously depends on the human being what are they going to experience, but
Let's give Jack a shot.
I do believe that there was actually an energy form, but he should say about it more than me.
Well, were you finished? I thought you were going to make a point after that.
No. We weren't really asking a question. Okay. Free for you.
Well, were you going to say that because nobody else could perceive it, that it was completely subjective and it wasn't like there was no substance to it at all?
Explain subjective to me in your words.
Like not independent of the person taking the substance.
Was it it's not, the question is not was it an emotional or real experience for the person because it feels so real. Like, anyone who's been in love?
Everyone?
Please, someone put their hand and say, I've been in love. So, is that physically tangible by anybody around it? No, it's observable, the way you react and you change. But for the person experiencing love, it's extremely real.
Right.
So your perception of the reality changes because what you're going through in that moment, correct? When I'm in love, I've been happily married for way too many years to talk about. When you're in love, your reality changes because it affects your values. It affects everything. It affects your perception of life. And so for Corey, something happened in that moment where it was a highly, let's use the word spiritual experience. It's a highly spiritual / emotional / you can't really say visible, but spiritually visible for Corey.
Right.
Nobody else could see it. So in that sense, I agree. It's real. It's a real experience for Corey. But the problem for me is the psychedelic has, while we say it has detached the physical from the spiritual, the psychedelic manipulates or confuses the brain's ability to determine reality from, and when I say reality, I'm saying the physical reality. Does that make sense?
Okay. So my issue with that is there is an assumption that what we are all perceiving right now is objective reality, but that assumption is made on the fact that we are all perceiving it right now. But what level of reality we're perceiving is based on like the chemistry that's going through our brain. And the thing is, the reason why we interpret such a different reality when we take psychedelics is because you're changing that fundamental chemistry. So if there was such an objective level of reality, it shouldn't be so easily altered just by changing the chemistry in the brain. And the only foundation for our assumption to say that this is the objective reality and that dude who's on psychedelics is on a psychosis is the fact that we're all perceiving this. But everybody who takes these psychedelics is going to the same place. And it's not just on the same substance, it's on different substances. This is why the capacity for religious experience is possible, because these places that people are going to, the reason why they're being referred to as like religious experiences is because they are so similar to what's described in the Bible. People like myself going into a white light taken by white entities, being given messages that literally changed my life completely for the better. I was going through a very nihilistic path before I ever encountered psychedelics. I was definitely destined for a bad path, I would say. And I had this sort of mystical experience, which completely humbled me. It actually changed me from being like a very stone cold atheist to like, all right, I really don't know what's out there. And this experience, if this is what Christians refer to as God, I actually can respect that. I can respect that point of view completely now. But if everybody was on, let's say, acid, right, and we're all like perceiving reality in this way, maybe not like going into the white light and seeing entities, but there is a very like common effect of psychedelics, which is that you can actually completely identify with people around you. So it's called ego death, and you'll lose touch with your sense of self. And if you don't go too far into this, it can induce something called the Truman Show effect, which is where you feel like everybody around you is completely interconnected with your mind. So they can read your thoughts and, basically everybody is just like insanely connected. If everybody, let's say there was like raining acid outside and like we didn't build up a tolerance to it.
20 seconds.
Okay. That would be our reality. We would all be perceiving this like state of unity. And if somebody like walked out with an umbrella and they were identifying with themselves, we'd be like, you're in a state of psychosis because you're identifying with the self, because it's different to what we're all perceiving. So all I'm saying is that this idea that,
Time.
Okay.
Pastor, what do you have to say?
Is there a question?
Well, I just want to hear a 30-second rebuttal to what you've just said, Jack just said.
Not so much a rebuttal as just a qualification that, we talk about through that experience, you experience some sort of an awakening that makes you realise there could be a a god of some description, right? Do you think part of the problem for our modern world, a secular society, is that we're so embraced in materialism and so embraced in this culture, it would take a psychedelic for a young person to accept the reality there's more to life than just money and career and this?
I mean, I'd say that's why I'd be like pro psychedelics, because that I agree that is kind of like where we're at, and psychedelics do help a lot of people kind of change that point of view.
So you think it's a necessary evil?
I wouldn't refer to it as an evil if it's doing good.
Well, it doesn't do good long-term good. I can tell you, I'm an old man now. I know
Like
it doesn't
what?
have a long-term good effect.
How so, though?
It does muck with your emotional control. It mucks with your social capacities. It mucks with your perception of reality. You do have flashbacks.
Obviously, I've taken quite a few psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally. I haven't had those experiences. I know there are people who have had bad trips as well, but I know like the majority of people I've talked to have only really come out of it on the other side with like positive things to say. Bad experiences, and I've had bad trips before, but I've come out of it on the other side with a positive feeling and like feeling stronger for it. So I wouldn't necessarily agree that psychedelics, if taken, have like a long-term negative effect myself.
5 seconds.
I'm done with that.
Cool. Question number 2. Are psychedelics the work of the devil?
You want me to start with this one?
I want you to take the floor.
Can I just say, I'm not your normal sort of pastor kind of
60
priest kind of
seconds.
guy. How long?
60 seconds.
60 seconds. Okay, so my view on the devil is Hollywood has done a spectacular job of making him a big, scary guy. Everyone's afraid of him. He's got horns and hoofs and all the rest of it. The fact is, I think he takes a lot of credit for what people do. And he's happy about that. He's happy for people to do ill against each other and him take the credit. Look what I made him do. You didn't make them do nothing. It's their human nature. They're greedy. They steal stuff. They're angry. They punch people. Don't take credit for that, you thief. So I think the devil's a doll bludger. So in short, do I think the psychedelics are the devil's work? No. The psychedelics are the product of very clever people who have found chemicals and put them together and made some incredible products. God put everything in. Like if we're going to take a Christian worldview, God created everything, man uses it. And whether they use it for good or bad is up to them.
Just like now.
Thank you very much. Jack,
Yeah, I agree.
you think that the devil's work?
No, I mean, I agree. It's not the devil's work.
It's not the
for
devil's
those reasons, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Just add a brief comment there before we move on, Hammad.
Let's go.
Some of the greatest, well, arguably the greatest advancement in modern medicine was made by a guy called Francis Crick, who was on LSD and discovered the double helix, which is the structure of DNA. And where would modern medicine be without a doctor taking acid in the US? It's quite wild to get your head around.
Yeah. Well, not only that, we look into shamanistic cultures of the Amazon, and we see interesting technologies, you could call it. So there's a brew called ayahuasca, and the way that this brew is created is from 2 plants. One is the ayahuasca vine, and one is the chacruna leaf. Now, the psychoactive component is within the leaf, the DMT. But if you were to eat the DMT leaf on its own, nothing would happen. There is an enzyme in your stomach called the monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which would cancel the effects of that DMT. However, somehow these primitive indigenous people figured out that if you connect that leaf with the ayahuasca vine, which contains a monoamine inhibitor, it's a fucking big word. Yeah, monoamine inhibitor canceller, right? You feel the psychoactive effects. Now, when we ask the shamans, Pastor, how did you figure this out? You know what they say? They say the plants told us. Now, out of 150,000 plus plants, counting, can you imagine the amounts of trial and error, the amounts of deaths of people from eating toxic plants that have to go through to figure out that 2 combination? What do you think?
What do I think the plants told them?
Yeah.
Were they smoking it at the time when they said that? No, the question is, to me, my understanding is that we're actually made in God's image. Now, we're in a fallen state right now, granted, otherwise we wouldn't have all the troubles in the world. But God gifted us with incredible intelligence. I mean, incredible intelligence. To think of the things we've accomplished is mind-boggling. I attribute that to God's brilliance in handing us the ability to discover. Did they discover it on their own? Probably. They say the plants told them. I wasn't there. I can't actually answer that. But I do have a great belief that humans are capable of incredible things, incredible good and incredible bad. And, I really can't comment on their comment as to whether... I think people are just brilliant. I think.
Cool. Thank you very much. We'll move to the next question. Speaking to other entities other than the ones mentioned in the Bible are demonic entities.
Are you talking under the influence of a psychedelic?
Under the influence of anything. So you could be meditating and you're speaking to another entity. You could be having a Shivas Regal and an entity speaking to you. Whatever works.
But maybe it would be interesting, like the entities that you meet on psychedelics, would they be demons or demonic entities?
Yeah, would they be guised as good characters, but rather they're there for a sinister purpose? Yeah. 2 minutes.
What would the pronouns be, though?
I've got to say, Corey did a smack up, a bang up job in that last session, eh? He was good, man. You were good, Corey. All right, so do I think that speaking to other entities or not under the influence of it's such a broad question, without psychedelics, is speaking to an evil entity or
the entities that you encounter in a psychedelic experience, are they evil entities?
We are talking psychedelics, okay.
Yeah.
As long as we're still in that forum, cool. I don't think anybody could really qualify that. Okay, so from my perspective, it could be angelic, it could be demonic, it could be purely personal hallucination. I don't think anybody could qualify. Because think about this. Like while I suppose most religious people, like myself, I hate that word, but anyway, would like to demonise the process. The fact is, God could speak to you, an angel could speak to you through that moment. So I think the suggestion that it would be purely demonic would be very narrow-minded understanding of God, that God couldn't break through and talk through and speak through, even in your most hallucinative state. I've been in some incredibly bad places, man, I'm telling you, and I felt like God's spoken to me. With or without hallucinogens, I felt like God has really spoken to me. Yeah,
how did God speak to you? Like, what, is it a male voice? Is it a female voice?
You know, it's. Well, I'm not going to preach at you. Okay, so there's this story, as quickly as I can, there's a story about a guy who runs away from a queen. She hates him. She wants to kill him. He's running away anyway. He's sitting there, and he's so petrified, he just wants to die. He wants it all to end. And then the earth quakes, and he says, and God was not in the earthquake. And then the wind blew, and God was not in the wind. And he says, but then this still small voice, God spoke to him. And so for most of us, I think if you're telling me that God comes and speaks to you, I'd be concerned if you tell me that there's this audible voice. I'd be encouraging you to get off whatever medication you're taking. Mostly, God will speak through Scripture, through the Word, and through yourself, just confirming what is true, what is natural, be right. I believe that we have the capacity to discern right from wrong.
4 seconds.
I believe we have the capacity to discern right from wrong, and often on an hallucinogen, what's actually happening is you're realising the truth that you already know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
2 minutes.
I think that a massive thing that psychedelics do is they do realize your own truth for sure. I don't know though if I'd say it's necessarily such a bad thing if you're getting in touch with like angels and stuff like that, or light beings and stuff on psychedelics. Like, I wouldn't necessarily myself say for somebody to get off of that. I think if there was if they were receiving messages on how to improve their life, and it wasn't some crazy messages that was inviting them to do some evil stuff. It was really positive messages, like the ones that most people do get. Myself, I got some positive messages. If they weren't integrating that and they just kept going back to the substance to kind of get that feeling, that positive feeling, I'd for sure say there's a problem. But yeah, I think for the most part, most people who take these psychedelics, have these sort of experiences, do feel like they are getting in touch with the greater truth. and there isn't really actually much of a desire to keep returning to it anyway, because they feel like they kind of are connected with what they really want, which is probably not to be a drug addict. It's probably to go out and pursue whatever they want to do. But for myself, I was using psychedelics a lot, and I think that's kind of what's necessary, or at least it was what was necessary for me when I was in a really dark place, and it just pulled me in a completely different direction.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jack. I really appreciate the input. Over there, guys.